We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Friday. It's been a busy week. Last night, we had the State of the Union with Joe Biden. The Republicans would have us believe that Joe's missing a step. He can't complete a sentence. He can't walk. He's diminished in many ways. He's got dementia. He's got Alzheimer's. But I got to tell you, I watched that State of the Union speech. It went an hour and a half. And in that hour and a half, Joe didn't falter once. Not fucking once. He sounded good. He sounded strong. He sounded inspirational, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's something we haven't heard in a long, long time, especially if you listen to the Republicans. Everything they talk about is fear and the horrors of this country and how we should all be afraid. It's about time that somebody was inspirational and gave us some hope for the future. And that hope is there as long as Joe Biden is elected president and Democrats take control of the House and the Senate. We do that, then there is some hope. And Joe is absolutely right about this. Joe was pretty strong, too. I mean, he went after the Republicans and Donald Trump. He embarrassed them. Let's be perfectly honest. He made Donald Trump and the Republicans his bitch. He even called out the Supreme Court for the Roe v. Wade situation and the Dobbs case. You could look at those Supreme Court justices and they were a little embarrassed. You saw Mike Johnson sitting behind him, making these weird, creepy faces. I don't know if Mike Johnson understands that he's going to be a hit on the meme parade, but he's going to be because he looked just weird and creepy and crazy. And then they had a response from the Republicans and they gave it to this freshman senator, Katie Britt from Alabama. Wow, that was a fucking shit show. You have to wonder why she was the one that gave the response, this young person that's new to politics. And I have to believe they put her up as a sacrificial lamb. I mean, who wants to follow Joe Biden? All they have to tell is lies. And that's exactly what she did. She told a lot of lies. She complained about the border and how Joe's doing a bad job there. What Katie Britt didn't tell us was that when they were negotiating and putting together this bipartisan border bill, the Republicans, she was in the mix there. She was one of the people that put this together, that negotiated it. And then when it came up for a vote, she voted against it. So somehow in her mind, this is Joe Biden's fault. I beg to differ. I think it's the Republicans' fault. And I think people are finally seeing that for what it's worth. We're going to talk about all of that stuff more as we get deeper into the show. But I've got some emails, as I typically do. I've got a short one from Ilona. You might remember Ilona. She was on the show, very smart, very well spoken woman. She simply said, I want you to know that I love all of you awesome community members. You guys rock. Ilona. Thank you, Ilona. I concur with what you say, and we love you just the same. So don't wait so long before you come back on the show. All right, the next email says, Good morning, Mike. I'm sure you've heard the newest hair on fire, and it's worrisome that it could be a game changer. Diaper Don has met with Elon Musk to beg for funds. If he gets what he needs, he is in Musk's debt, literally and figuratively. MSNBC, yes, mainstream media predicted that if Donnie gets what he needs from Elon, that he will get past all the troubles he's facing and get into the White House again. Please, motherfucker, that's not true. I mean, I'm sure it's true that they said that, but that's just a ridiculous statement. And then they went on to saying, close any and all loopholes and allow him to shut down major news outlets who don't report what they want. I understand he hates the FCC and wants to abolish it. I'm anxious to hear your take on it. Thanks as always for your calm demeanor and rational perspective on the mess in DC. Crazy Cat Mom, Judy, Portland, Oregon. P.S. Don't care how you pronounce Oregon, any way you want. I know someone gave you some shit about that. Yeah, they did. But been married 40 years. I got 2 kids and a grandkid. I'm used to getting shit. Um, Yeah, I didn't hear that on MSNBC. I'm surprised that they would say that sort of thing. Um, the real question is, why would Elon Musk give him the money? And in fact, Elon Musk came out on X and said that he's not donating money to either candidate, which makes some sense because Donald Trump has talked some shit about Elon Musk. And of course, Joe Biden didn't invite him to an EV summit at the White House. So he's not buddies with either side. He doesn't want Joe Biden to be president, but giving Donald Trump is just pissing away money. Now, I know he's pissed away some money, like in buying Twitter, but the only way somebody gives Donald Trump money is if there's something they can get in return, whether it's interest and improve on their money. But Donald Trump isn't a good credit risk. Let's be honest. I mean, we're right now a day or so away from the time that he needs to put up $83.3 million. And he's nowhere to be found. There is no money. He doesn't have the money, and no one's willing to give him the money. And Elon Musk said he's not giving him the money. And again, what would be the point? Is he going to put up his buildings, the ones he has very little equity in, because he leverages everything? Now, that's not going to do it. Or maybe it would give Elon Musk the opportunity to own a president. Well, that would be fine if Donald Trump had any hope of being president, but he doesn't. So Donald Trump really has nothing to offer at this point. I don't see Elon Musk giving him money. I mean, I could be wrong. Elon Musk did some stupid shit with money, but I just don't see what the advantage to Elon Musk is to do that. All right. Thank you very much, crazy cat lady. Moving on. Hello, Boomer. I'm sick of these arrogant, uncommitted types and their hypocrisy and stupidity. It was Trump who handed IDF military intelligence over to the Russian ministers, and yes, spies on their little private tour sneaker boy gave them in the White House. Let me ask you, outraged types, especially young people, something. Back in September of 23, Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey, again attacked, raped, murdered, displaced, and persecuted the Armenian people. We didn't hear much outrage then, did we? Where were you then? Aren't they people too, or do you have a rating system for outrage? Maybe it wasn't big enough to feed your ego. Understand, by not voting or voting for an idiot like RFK Jr., you will be opening the door wide to Trump and his insane fascist party. If you're a young woman and feel this way, remember, if they get in power, they will end your life as a free woman and a human being. You'll be reduced to less than cattle, and you'll be just a baby machine for the state. You and your friends will be reduced to servants, not citizens. They will rule, not govern. Wake up and start looking at the big picture. It can and will happen here. Biden is doing everything possible to end the madness. What we are seeing in the Middle East is mental illness made worse by meddling of the West for over 100 years. It's the result of civilization building foundations on fairy tales for 5,000 years, and this is what happens when they don't work anymore. It's too big an issue. What stake do you have in this? Get real, grow up, vote, because if you don't, you'll bring hell on yourself. I told all my nieces and nephews to wise up. This is ridiculous. Thanks, Boomer, for keeping it real. Z Man. Oh, thank you, Z Man. I'm equally as annoyed by some of these people that are making these protest votes to uncommitted. Now, here's what you have to understand, Z Man. This is all for show. When it comes down to it and they have to choose between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they'll vote for Joe Biden. What they're trying to do is put a scare into Joe Biden to get him to bend their way. That's what they're trying to do. When it comes down to that, even they aren't stupid enough to vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who recently said that he supports Israel and is all about wiping out Hamas, which is even stronger than Joe Biden has done. Joe Biden is doing everything he can to take um, people out of the crossfire, but he's the president of the United States. He's not the president of Israel. What you need to understand about Israel, their leader is very much like Donald Trump, and that's why we're looking at this situation the way it is. And then you throw in a terrorist organization with Hamas, and that's a recipe for fucking disaster. And that's what we're looking at. Yes, it's horrific. Yes, it's horrible. But as Z Man pointed out, this kind of stuff happens around the world all the time. How come you're only worried about this one? I understand why you're worried, and I'm just as appalled as you are. But we've got a lot of problems here. If we don't fix our problem, that problem is going to get worse. And by putting up your protest votes, you might think you're doing something, but you're fucking really not. It's all performative. It's all for show. Because when it comes down to it, you're not going to vote for Donald Trump. There's no way. And if you do, fucking move on, because you'll be in the minority. Thanks, Z-Man, for that. I'm not worried about these people that vote uncommitted because when it comes down to it, they will vote the proper way. All right. This next one comes from Adam. Says, I'm confused. Seen your post and seen other posts about Weisselberg getting 7 years, yet nothing in the press. Somebody is obviously premature. Wish I had more time this week, but family in town. Adam. Well, first of all, Adam, the situation with Weisselberg is all over the news, and you heard wrong. Weisselberg pled guilty to perjury. And what I did say is that he could get sentenced to 4 to 5 months in prison, much like he did the first time. But it's been well reported. He pled guilty to perjury. He pled guilty to perjury that he committed during the Letitia James lawsuit in front of Judge Engeron. They've been talking about it a lot. And it's not 7 years. It's 4 or 5 months is what he could very well get, much like what he got before. But he's also going to have to testify. And that's going to be interesting. And that's freaking Donald Trump the fuck out. All right, the next one comes from Craig. He says, Hey, Mike, I'm writing because I saw part of an interview MTG did where she lost her fucking mind on a reporter asking about Trump and MAGA members bringing out all the conspiracy theorists in the mainstream. Her response was the equivalent to, I'm not a poop face, you're a poop face. It got me realizing that it's about to get so much worse for Republicans as campaign season ramps up. They're going to get these kinds of questions until November. Republicans are so fucked. Thanks as always, Craig. Yeah, I saw that interview and basically Marjorie Taylor Greene got all up in her feels, as they say, and ended the little conversation with this British journalist basically saying, fuck off. She couldn't handle it anymore. She couldn't answer the question. She was being made to look foolish. And let's be perfectly honest, making Marjorie Taylor Greene look foolish, not a hard thing to do. But she got upset. She said, fuck off, and she took off. Yeah, all of this is going to get worse for all these years where the media has allowed these people to spew their shit and never push back. That's about to change because the tide has changed. Where the action is going to be, where the attention is going to be, is now going after these Trump-fucks and putting them in the corner. Now it's expeditious for viewers to get tough on the Republicans. Had they been tough on the Republicans in the beginning, we wouldn't even be in this place. That's why I blame the media to a large extent as to why we're in this position now. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it. Next one comes from Gussie. Gussie says, Hey, Boomer, I think it's about time we start tracking how the repusives are planning on stealing the election. I believe the Russians helped them steal it the first time. I believe that they're in the process of the steal right now. I certainly hope that Biden's Central Intelligence Agency and cyber teams are way ahead of me on this one and have not been infiltrated. Our election prevention team should be shouting, We never close. We never sleep. We'll fuck you up, you slimy creep, Gussie. Yeah, I'm sure they're on notice right now. based on what we've seen in history, they're going to be very careful with that stuff. And the thing about it is we're in a much different circumstance now. Donald Trump's not the president. The Republicans essentially aren't in control. Joe Biden is there. The Democrats have a watch out. We've seen them do it once and they failed. That was their opportunity. If they were going to be successful, that would have been the time. Now the situation is much different. They will try, but they will fail again because they even have less of a chance of accomplishing what they want this time around. All right. Next one says, Dear Mike, I know that we're in the same situation for who we want to be sitting in the Oval Office, and it doesn't seem like 2016 because now in 2024 it's going to be a blue wave. I realized that Nikki was trying her hardest to beat Trump during his journey, but she fought a good fight and had to end her presidential race. I just saw a TikTok from a creator called Dash Dabrowski. I know who he is. And he posted a TikTok video saying that President Joe Biden wants Nikki Haley supporters to join him to beat Dirty Diaper Donnie. And I don't blame him with the amount of people who support him. Wait, I heard that a lot of the Republicans are changing their minds and not voting for him during the month of November. And I absolutely love this because I can see this as the downfall of Dirty Diaper Donnie. Colin Allred is running to unseat Texas boy Ted Cruz, and I can't wait to see what he does in the U.S. Senate. I'm smelling and viewing a huge, no massive blue wave coming 2024. I'm just sitting back and watching this presidential election story flow. Donald Dirty Diaper Donnie has less than 3 days to pay E. Jean Carroll the $83.3 million, and he wasn't able to come up with a real appeal or a bond for the NYC federal fraud case. But what about his two sons who have to pay up front? Ha 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 ha. Oh, endless laughter, Trevor. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Trevor. And but you wrote this a couple of days ago, so he's basically got one day. If the money isn't in the bond by Monday, uh, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer will go to the court and say, "We need to start seizing some of this shit." So we'll see what happens. Yeah, in terms of people voting for Joe Biden that were voters for Nikki Haley, the premise for that was that Donald Trump got a little butthurt about those people voting for Nikki Haley. And Donald Trump came out and said, listen, I don't want Nikki Haley's voters. I don't need Nikki Haley's voters. And that's when Joe Biden stepped in and said, hey, you're welcome over here. We can get democracy back on track and get things straight. So if Donald Trump doesn't want you, we do. This is the dumbest thing that Donald Trump has done yet. Here's the deal. If he gets all the Republicans to vote for him, he still needs the independents and the moderates and such. He still needs them to win, and he's lost them pretty much. Now that he will have lost maybe 25% of the Republican Party, you can see what I've always been saying. He can't win. If he can't get all the Republican Party behind him, he can't win. Now, some people will say, oh, he'll get them back. Oh, how's he going to do that? Donald Trump hasn't been good with increasing his popularity or his standing or his support in the last 3 years. He's done nothing but gone south on his support. And Donald Trump is at a point when everything's spinning around him. He is flailing and his world is falling apart. You really think he's going to be able to bring those fucks back? Now, he's going to get crazier and he's going to lose more people. And when it comes to November, if he is still, in fact, the nominee, he's going to get fucking destroyed. Trust me, he's going to get destroyed. There's no other way it can be. All right. Next up. This emailer says, Bob McLean here, expatriate living in Cuenca, Ecuador, from Kansas, USA, 3 years. Had to let you know how we appreciate all that you do. An old soul is no less than a true hero of mankind. Can't help but love her for all that she is. Good luck at the prison, young lady, to you and your efforts. You'll be fine, as the people inside are also struggling to make things better. I will say too, I told Old Soul, I said, now you go give your talk today, talking about yesterday. And I said, please let me know how it went and that you're safe. And, because she's a sweet woman walking into a men's prison. That's a pretty gutsy thing to do. Well, she sent me a text and said, it went fine. All is good. I'm safe. I'm back in the hotel. But guess what? She's going back today. And I told her, let us know how it goes today, too. But you're not surprised that she was successful in what she's doing. She really puts her heart and soul into things. She does a lot of stuff. She's a far better person than I, and I appreciate that in her. It's truly amazing seeing a young woman like this going out of her way, inconveniencing herself to try to do better for the country. We could use a lot more people like Old Soul. Now, the emailer goes on to say, Mike, I discovered some ammunition that I love to use on maggots. It's so very effective, like the Warthog USAF low flying fighter jet with a rapid fire machine gun in its nose. When people, maggots, keep telling me how Joe Biden is incompetent and not fit for the job, I remind them how Biden effectively ended the pandemic, which is something Donald Trump could have done if he bothered to do anything. He was absolutely negligent. And if you want to try to tell me that Joe is not moving as well as he should, all you had to do is watch the State of the Union last night. Joe's fine. But best of all about Obama, Biden was trained by Obama. Obama trained Biden well. I got to be honest with you. I think Biden trained Obama. Biden's been in this biz for a long time. Obama was relatively new to the business when he took the presidency. Now, don't get me wrong. Obama's a very smart man. He was a great president and he probably knew a lot. But it didn't hurt having a guy that's been in the Senate as long as Joe Biden along his side. He goes on to say, by then the maggot hair is smoking. All jokes aside, the younger generations love Obama and sometimes forget that Obama picked Biden for his VP, and they really did work together very effectively. Enough of my input. It's just a thought. Thanks again for doing what you do. Stay safe. If Joe is good enough for Obama, Joe is good enough for me. Take care, Bob. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it immensely. Next one says, hi, Boomer. I didn't know about the California situation until you and Soul informed us today, and it's a little sketchy. I didn't know either. Thank you, Old Soul, for informing me. But I want to defend Adam and remember the exemplary and bold work he did re the Congressional January 6th committee. He was central in that effort and very capable an advocate and spokesman. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking shit about Adam Schiff. I think he'll be a fine senator, and I think he's been a great representative, and he did a great job with the January 6th committee. I think what happened there happens a lot in this business. It's not an illustration of the human; it's more the illustration of of the business of politics. I guess you could say, don't hate the player, hate the game, and that's probably what it was. Now, he goes on to say, I happened to be in Reagan Airport in the thick of that, and Schiff rushed by me in a crowded terminal. He looked harried, and no one accompanied him. He was also very recognizable physically. It seemed impossible to me that he wouldn't be constantly confronted by Trumplawads. I have to think that he is, and that he's paid a high price for his efforts. He's earned the AG role in a second Biden administration, in my honest opinion, and there would be something about that feels fair and just. Now, I'll hasten to add my full support for Amy Klobuchar for that or any senior role. I actually think she could be the first female POTUS. I always remember her handling of Brett Kavanaugh and thinking, oh, she's a total pro and a badass as well. Big, big fan of Amy. Best garage door Jeff. P.S. Sometime back, Ed mentioned waiting for Trump's Captain Queeg moment. I went and found that scene with Bogart in the Mutiny on YouTube, and it's worth watching. But my question would be, what would it take at this point for Trump's behavior to be extreme enough to be considered revealing? Good grief. I agree with you. I think that Captain Queeg moment has come and gone many times. I mean, I don't know how much more Donald Trump has to lose his shit before people go, Jesus, that's horrible. All right, the next one. Hey, Mike, Dennis from Iowa. I was just listening to your podcast today with Old Soul. Just had a question about voting rights for convicted criminals. I'm not an expert by any means in crime and penalties, but I was under the impression that felons cannot vote. Do you have any information on this? And wouldn't it be something if the orange goo of shit got felony conviction before the elections wasn't able to vote? Dennis. Well, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert on this, I think whether a felon can vote or not is a state issue. It's not a federal issue. So some states they can vote, and other states they can't. That's probably the best I can do in explaining it. And that's how I understand it. So in some states, like in Nevada, apparently you can vote even if you're a felon. All right. Next up. Hey, Mike, I love the show and the guest and the people who tune in. I'm a retired vet and have close friends that I serve with both in peacetime and in combat. We're all retired now. We call each other frequently and have been lately talking much about the presidential election and who we want as our nation's leader and why. Then he says, bluff, bottom line up front. It's Biden, and here's why. President Biden is a confident leader who is proven and calm under pressure. The economy, our recovery from the pandemic, and dealing with an increasingly psychotic MAGA crowd have all been dealt with professionally and ably. He has passed each test with resolve and the dignity that befits the president of our nation. Thank you for your program, your work, your time, and all you do for the country. May we leave this world a better place for our children. Sincerely, First Sergeant Al, I won't give the last name. I almost did. Not that it would do anything. Al will probably kick your ass if you come after him. All right, the next one. Rational Boomer. All right, I am writing to correct information provided by Old Soul. She said that Adam Schiff gave $11 million to Steve Garvey's campaign, or at least I thought I heard her say that. He did not. He and the Democratic Party spent that much on Adam Schiff's campaign during the end of the race, constantly bringing up Steve Garvey's name and criticizing him uh, when there was no need to, as it was a clear way that he was going to win, and the real race was against Garvey and Katie Porter. By doing that, it pushed Garvey to be his opponent in November rather than Porter. Now, I will say this. I did see a speech by Katie Porter, and Katie Porter specifically said that Adam Schiff spent more money giving money to Garvey than he spent on his own campaign. That's what she said. Now, you can dispute what Old Soul says or dispute what I said, but I think I believe Katie Porter. I don't know the specifics of it. I don't know how it all worked out, but the bottom line is Schiff wanted to run against Garvey and not Katie Porter, and I get it. That would have been a tough race. No matter who got the Senate seat, we would have won as a country, but Schiff didn't want that. And remember, it's not just Schiff. Nancy Pelosi and all the establishment Democrats wanted Schiff. So the fix was in from the beginning. And again, I'm not ripping Schiff. I think Schiff will be a fine senator, but that's the dirty shit that goes on in that business. He goes on to say, I think that he knew what he was doing, and I think that it stinks. I personally like Katie Porter way more than I do Schiff. I think that it was a dirty trick, and I'm also pissed that the Democrats were in on the trick. Some have said they did it because Katie Porter had made critical comments about Joe Biden for his actions and inactions on the Israeli war. Even though I'm pissed about Schiff and the Democrats, I think that it is the truth that must be pointed out. I agree with Old Soul's opinion on the results of Schiff's moves, but I, for one, do not find anything to admire about Schiff's maneuvers, even if these kinds of things will help Democrats once he's U.S. Senator. I've lost all respect for him. Boris. Well, Boris, you're going to be hard pressed to have respect for many politicians. All these games we don't normally get to see, but there's a lot of this bullshit going on within both parties. We just have to understand that. That's how the game is played. Washington, D.C. is a dirty fucking business. Um, I don't like what Adam Schiff did. And since I heard from Katie Porter's mouth that, in fact, Adam Schiff did give more money to Garvey than he spent on his own, I have to believe her. I mean, she was closest to it as anybody. But regardless, Adam Schiff is now going to be running for the Senate seat, and he will probably win because Steve Garvey is a fucking buffoon, and he's nothing more than a guy who trying to be a Trump humper and trying to make out because he's riding the coattails of a treasonous orange piece of shit. Not a good choice as far as I'm concerned, but that's Steve Garvey. All right, another email. Hi, Mike. Hope you're having a good day so far. I follow the debate as widely as I can regarding Trump to get as good a picture of the situation as possible. I can recommend Midas Touch Network, an angle that shows the legal bit and facts checks everything he says. Unfortunately, there are so many people who are a little lazy in the head and can't bear to find out the facts. But generally, just burping out, oh, Trump is going to win big, he crushes Biden. But that is, of course, not the case. Biden will win against Trump again. If democracy loving Americans choose to save America from the madness and go to the polls. But don't make the same mistake the Democrat campaign made with Hillary. It was considered an easy victory, but that did not happen. You have to keep the pressure up. You have to push the campaign. You have to inform the facts. There are so many opportunities to win big if you play the cards you have. It's playing against an empty goal. An interesting thing I read about the Pentagon case where 22-year-old Jack Tahara got 16 years in prison for revealing secret documents. I guess that's a reasonable benchmark for Donnie, 16 years in prison. Yeah, it's kind of in that range. 16 years in prison for disclosing Allied weapons systems and capabilities. Donnie has put the United States in a soap opera. He will soon claim the rights to the series. He needs to sell it dearly for all the cash his incompetence is costing him. Continue your important conversation, Mike. I'd be happy to join live sometime with an angle from Sweden, even if I'm not as knowledgeable as you Americans, not just me, about your system. All the best, Krister. I sent him an email and I said, yeah, absolutely. Come on the show. It would be interesting to get an international point of view. And since my heritage comes from Sweden and Norway, it would be nice to hear from the home country. We've been going back and forth a little bit, and hopefully we'll set something up. And Krister will be on the show at some time or some point soon. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. As I mentioned early on in the show, Joe Biden has his State of the Union speech last night. And let's be honest, Joe kicked some Trump the fuck ass. He looked strong. He looked inspirational. He called out Donald Trump and the Republicans. He embarrassed them. He made them his bitch. It was a good showing for Joe Biden. It was exactly what needed to be done. And I can only hope Joe Biden keeps up this strong presence. I think it'll be very helpful leading up to the November election. So Joe urged Republicans to stand up for democracy at home and abroad in the State of the Union address last night, criticizing some in a party who are attempting to whitewash the violent January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. He brought up the insurrection, and all the Republicans were acting like, oh, it was no big deal. Nothing really happened, when we all know something very dangerous happened. We've seen the fucking video. How much more do we have to see to believe what Joe Biden is telling us? Now, Biden said that the former president, Donald Trump, he'd always refer to him as my predecessor, lies about the 2020 election, posed the greatest threat to our democracy since the Civil War, but that ultimately America stood strong and democracy prevailed when Congress certified his electoral victory hours after hundreds of Trump supporters ransacked the Capitol. And that's an excellent point. They had everything going for them. If there was a time when they were going to pull off this attempted coup, it would have been then. And they still failed. So the idea that they might try to pull it off again, they have even less likelihood to pull it off now that Joe Biden's in office and the Democrats have a certain amount of control. And we've already seen what they're capable of. Trust me, when that certification day comes around this next time, they'll be ready for them. And it won't be a pleasant experience if they try it again. Joe went on to say, my predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. Yeah, he called out people right in Congress, right there. He said, I will not do that, referring to supporters of Trump and the presumptive 2024 nominee, Donald Trump. He added, here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win. And he made an excellent point there. As I've said, his speech was very poignant, and that was one of those moments. Democratic members of Congress in the chamber stood and cheered his remarks, but Republicans, of course, stayed seated and remained silent, including, of course, House Speaker Mike Johnson, seated behind Biden, who shook his head slightly as the president spoke. As I said, he kind of smirked or he frowned, and he was just creepy looking. And he's going to be the source of a lot of memes coming up. Before his time as Speaker, Johnson played a leading role in trying to reverse Biden's presidential victory in the courts with claims of widespread fraud that are based on no evidence. Now, as Speaker, he's offered statements of support for those who illegally entered a restricted federal building as part of the attack. Now, Trump and other Republicans have since glorified the events, as we know, portraying the violent rioters who were convicted of storming the Capitol and assaulting police officers as martyrs and political prisoners, calls them hostages. Now, at a recent rally in South Carolina, Trump played a song recorded by January 6 convicts before he spoke, and he still maintains falsely that the 2020 election was rigged. Yeah. That's great, Donnie. It's been proven that you're wrong, and you just double, triple, quadruple, quintuple down, and you just look dumber every time you do it. And it may cost you some things while you're in court, especially that one in D.C. If you still believe that there was fraud in the election, you're going to find out very quickly that that's already been proven not to be the case. I'll give you a little test here. Who do you think the biggest dipshit in the State of the Union address was? Yeah, I know you know. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She turned heads and raised eyebrows at the State of the Union address by wearing a red MAGA hat along with a T-shirt bearing the name of Laken Riley, a University of Georgia student believed to have been killed by a migrant. She got very close to President Joe Biden as he entered the House floor in full view. She tried real hard. I don't even know what she's doing. I don't even know if anybody in the Republican Party still likes that stupid bitch. But she's still trying very hard. And her time in the House of Representatives is probably short. Not as short as Lauren Boebert, but short nonetheless. This outraged panel on MSNBC, which questioned whether she was even following House rules and criticized House Speaker Mike Johnson for allowing that conduct. MTG in direct violation of the rules of the House by wearing campaign insignia on the House floor. And that came from Representative Jamie Raskin, a Democrat and a law professor. So I think he would know. Well, that's a good question. What will they do with this dipshit now? She's broken the rules. She continually breaks the rules, and the Republicans just let her go. Well, when the Republicans are no longer in power, we'll see how long she continues that fucking kind of behavior. Because when the Democrats are in control, she might get George Santos very quickly. Now, Rachel Maddow said, I just have to ask you about the hat, turning to Claire McCaskill. Isn't there a rule? McCaskill said, I'm really surprised that she's not being asked to remove the hat. It makes me think that Speaker Johnson is really afraid of her. And look at her. Who isn't afraid of her? And Maddow said, because there is a rule. And she said, there's a strict rule, no hats for any reason, especially a hat that is, I'm not aware of any time a hat is allowed on the floor of the Senate, said McCaskill. I'm not as familiar with the House rules, but you could never wear a hat on the floor of the Senate. So I'm not sure, other than if the Speaker just doesn't want to have the Sergeant at Arms tell her to remove it, because if he did, they probably remove him from Speaker. She'd file a motion. The hat is an incredibly tacky choice by somebody who it shouldn't be surprising at this point. There's nothing that she does that is surprising, but it's open me for the dignity of the office that she holds, regardless of, the QAnon stuff. She's a member of the United States Congress at some point. One would think you would aspire to have a minimal amount of dignity in your presentation, and she has no such aspiration. Well, that's true. Isn't she the one that, when she was filling in with for Kevin McCarthy, she asked the House for some decorum? This stupid bitch doesn't even know the definition of decorum. She has everything but decorum, and she needs to stand out. She needs to get attention. She's a lot like Donald Trump in that regard. But all she did is really make herself look foolish, and she's pretty good at that as well. All right. We had some good news yesterday. Donald Trump is scrambling when it comes to this bill that's coming due. $83.3 million he's got to come up with today, tomorrow, certainly by Monday. He's got to post a bond if he hopes to appeal. If not, then what's going to happen is E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, her name is Kaplan, will go to the court and ask to make good on what he owes by seizing property and liquidating said property. So this is kind of a tight situation. Now, Donald Trump was doing everything he could to try to delay. And the fact of the matter is, he's just delaying the inevitable. He might be able to put it off a little extra time, but the fact of the matter is, at some time, he's going to have to pay the piper. And this is one of those times. A federal judge on Thursday rejected former President Trump's request to delay the $83.3 million judgment in the advice columnist E. Jean Carroll's defamation lawsuit, refusing to give Trump more time to post a bond with the deadline only a few days away. So he wanted to delay it even a few days so that he can get his money together. But it's going to be hard for him to get his money together. Well, he doesn't have any money. The former president and the GOP nominee has mounted efforts to postpone the judgment in both Carroll's lawsuit and the New York Attorney General's fraud prosecution, with Trump staring down hundreds of millions in penalties between the two civil cases. He's got this weekend to come up with $83 million, and then in a couple of weeks, he's got to come up with $500 million. all from a guy who's not a billionaire and who doesn't have the fucking cash. Also, a guy who's not a good credit risk, so he's going to get nobody to put up the bond for him. Now, Thursday's ruling hands a loss to Trump by maintaining default rules that enable enforcement of the judgment in Carroll's lawsuit as early as next week, effectively making it Trump's deadline to post a bond. Kaplan wrote, Mr. Trump's current situation is a result of his own dilatory actions. It's on you, bitch, is basically what he's saying. Now, a federal jury sitting in New York ordered Trump to pay the 8-figure sum for defaming Carroll by denying her story when she came forward in 2019 to accuse the then president of sexual assault decades earlier. Now, last year, a separate jury had found Trump liable for sexually abusing the advice columnist. Now, under standard practice, Trump's lawyers have said Trump's bond amount would total $91.63 million as he appeals the January verdict. He sent out a notice that he's going to appeal, but he has no appeal until he puts up the money. So E. Jean Carroll and her lawyer Kaplan are looking at Donald Trump and says, "Where's my money, bitch?" Now, Trump in recent days has filed motions seeking a new trial in the case or to get damages reduced. Trump had demanded Kaplan, appointed to the bench by former President Clinton, delay the judgment until 30 days after the judge rules on those motions, or alternatively reduce the bond to an amount of 24.475. Well, Kaplan has ruled on that request. And Thursday, the judge denied Trump's more recent demand of an administrative stay in the meantime to punt Saturday's deadline. This is a continuation of a totally lawless witch hunt, Trump campaign spokesman Steve Chung said in a statement. President Trump filed a timely motion to stay the ridiculous judgment, and many courts, including the Second Circuit, recognize the importance of temporary administrative stays while such motions are considered. We look forward to continuing to litigate the case and to complete vindication of the truth. Well, here's the deal. It's state law that, yes, you can appeal, but you're missing one point. You got to put up the money first. You can't not put up the money and expect to appeal or a stay. You've got to show that you can afford to even fucking pay this to even appeal it. You can ask for the appeal, but you ain't getting an appeal until you put up the money, bitch. Now, Carroll's lawyers opposed the former president's request to delay the judgment or reduce his bond amount, expressing concerns that Trump wouldn't actually pay up. I think that's a fair concern. Donald Trump is famous for not paying up to anybody. Now, E. Jean Carroll's lawyer Kaplan said he simply asked the court to trust me and offers in a case with an $83.3 million judgment against him, the court filing equivalent of a paper napkin. That's the thing. When he makes his appeal, he makes no good points. There are no good points as to why he should get this stay or this reduction. He just says, I want it because I'm Donald Trump. And unfortunately, the courts don't see it that way. And Donald Trump can't even offer a good argument. Now, Trump lawyers pushed back, noting that Carroll's team had highlighted to the juries Trump's own claims about the size of his wealth, a strategy aimed at upping the total damages. Well, they said that because he said that. Carroll's lawyers are using a fast and loose approach to the facts, wrote Trump attorneys Alina Habba and D. John Sauer. Loose and fast. Sounds like somebody else I know. Now, Sauer was added as an attorney on the case following the trial. Sauer is also representing Trump as he appeals his presidential immunity defense from his federal election subversion charges, as well as Trump's appeal on a gag order imposed in that case. How many fucking court cases does Donald Trump have? I'm surprised he has any lawyers left, because if he is paying them, and I think he has to pay them up front, He's going to be running out of money soon. And then he's asking them to do absolutely ridiculous shit that gets them sanctioned or disbarred. But they continue to do it. All right. There's another court case that Donald Trump is having some issues with. Former President Donald Trump is on the brink of a tantrum. Oh, no, not that. As details emerge from the criminal court case that he really hates, according to a new report. Now, Trump is getting a little upset over Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's hush money case as court filings reveal steamy details from the former president's past. Sources who have spoke with Trump told the New York Times. And see, this is what I've always said. It's not as much about going to jail. It's not as much about money. It's about being embarrassed, giving people the perception he is a criminal or he's a loser. And that's what this case will do. People will say, well, it's not as important as DC or Georgia or Florida. Maybe not. But it's going to expose a lot of shit and it's going to embarrass Donald Trump. And that is what will get Donald Trump to fucking implode. Now, Trump's aides are blunt that he particularly hates this case, given the nature of the story that prosecutors intend to put in front of the jury. The details being made public also upset Trump. The Times reporter then dig into the details. They report Trump hates being made public. Well, that's not totally true. He just likes anything that goes public for him to be positive for him. But when you're in a criminal case, there aren't many positive things that are going to be exposed. Now, in the waning days of Trump's first run for the White House, the porn star Stormy Daniels threatened to reveal an affair she says she had with him, a scandalous development that could have damaged his campaign, the pair write. So, according to prosecutors and their star witness, the former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, Trump arranged to buy her silence. In so doing, employees working at his direction falsified a series of invoices, checks, and ledger entries to cover his tracks. Now, Trump has pleaded not guilty to all 34 counts of falsifying business records, and it's slated to stand trial on March 25th, the same day more than $450 million for the civil fraud payout is due. You see what I mean? Couple of weeks. It's going to be a real bad day for Donald Trump. And the important thing to understand about this case in the Manhattan District, it's just not about paying Stormy Daniels off. There's actually another woman involved here that he paid off as well. It has to do with fraud, as we just pointed out, but it has to do with election interference as well. And that's where the felony comes in. Donald Trump doesn't want this stuff exposed. I mean, even if he was found not guilty of all 34 charges, which will not happen, the fact that he's being exposed this way is enough to absolutely destroy Donald Trump emotionally. Now, the former president and Bragg are now locked into a battle over evidence that could be presented in the trial, specifically the notorious Access Hollywood tape that almost torpedoed his 2016 campaign. And why it didn't, I'll never fucking know. Now, while the Trump team argues its merit is more salacious than informative, Bragg contends the tape proves that Trump had a motive to silence Daniels. Now, Bragg would also like to inform the jury of a report payment made to Trump Tower doorman Dino Sojudin to keep him from spreading a baseless claim about Trump's out-of-wedlock child. I bet there is one, at least one. Not surprisingly, the Times reporters write, Trump's lawyers have vehemently objected to that. Now, while legal experts say that from a judicial perspective, Bragg is the least substantial of the four criminal cases Trump faces politically, it is placed to deliver a punch. The trial begins just a few short weeks after former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley dropped out of the Republican presidential nomination, leaving Trump anxious to scoop up supporters who could still vote either way. Now, the details of Trump's behavior could also further alienate women and swing voters whose backing he needs in the general election. I think that that train has left the station. I think he's already alienated the women in the suburbs. I mean, when you embrace the fact that you are the one responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, you don't have to do much more to women than take away their constitutional right to lose their votes. Unless you're a dumb fucking Trump-la-fuck and you're a woman, you're crazy to vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump knows that. And whatever's exposed in this particular case, I don't know if it's going to cause any more damage. It's certainly not going to help him, but it's not going to cause any more damage because he's pretty much alienated himself from any women voters in this country, any women voters of normal intelligence, put it that way. Now, the judge presiding over former President Trump's criminal hush money trial that we just spoke about, Judge Juan Marchand, has ordered that the identities of the jurors be concealed from the general public amid the fears that they could be subject to tampering. And this is a fair bet. This is a fair bet to this situation because we know he's tried to tamper with witnesses. He's tried to tamper with the jury. He's caused these people to get death threats and stalked and all kinds of things. So this is probably a very good plan for this judge in New York. He's basing it on what he's seen over the last couple of years. So he knows these people need to be protected. The names of the jurors in Donald Trump's hush money case will be kept secret. However, he added, Judge Juan Marchand ruled that Trump, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and the attorneys for both sides will still know their identities and addresses. So, if Trump knows those identities, will he release them? Well, he'll be in some deep shit if he does. We're talking about a criminal court now, not a civil court. And Donnie might spend a couple of days or longer in a prison if he doesn't learn to shut his fucking mouth. Now, among the remarkable findings underlying the decision, the writer noted, Marchand wrote, the court further finds good cause that there is a likelihood of bribery, jury tampering, or of the physical injury or harassment of jurors, and that the former president has an extensive history of publicly and repeatedly attacking trial jurors and grand jurors. That's interesting. He's going into court with a judge who knows he's a piece of shit and has to protect the jury from said piece of shit. Now, Bragg has charged Trump with bookkeeping fraud, alleged criminal scheme to shield from the government and the public the true purpose of payments that were alleged to buy the silence of Stormy Daniels, concealing an affair between them to prevent voters from knowing about it going into the 2016 election. Now, the fraud has been charged as felonies, which means Bragg is alleging it was done in service of concealing other criminal acts. The trial is currently scheduled to begin on March 25th, which would make it the first of the former president's 4 criminal cases to be heard in court. The other 3 are currently tied up in various motions and challenges, including an ethics hearing in Georgia and a Supreme Court case involving presidential immunity that have put their trial dates up in the air and in some cases made it difficult to schedule them prior to 2024. As I've told you before, people are worried about the other ones and when they are going to start, and they're worried about them starting after the election. And I've told you, don't worry about that so much. First of all, Aileen Cannon set up a hearing for March 15th, which was a surprise to everybody because they figured she would put it off. I think she's feeling the pressure from Jack Smith and the possibility of getting recused or kicked off the case because Jack Smith has about had enough. We could see the documents case before the election. We could see the DC case before the election or leading right up to the election. As I've told you before, that's not a bad thing. Can you imagine Donald Trump having to be in court every day 2 to 3 months prior to the election? No time to campaign. He's worried about convictions. this would destroy Donald Trump leading up to the election. So it's not a bad thing. But even over and above that, as I've said before, this money situation is coming down right now. Right now, it's coming down. And that is going to break him emotionally. It's going to fuck him up uh, like nobody's business, as Donald Trump might say. And then you've got the criminal trial starting up. Well, what is it? It's the 8th of February, and he's got to start his trial on the 25th. So what's that put out? Uh, we're talking about 2.5 weeks, and he's going on criminal trial, after which he will have lost all his money. You don't think this is going to destroy Donald Trump? Well, it's most certainly will. He's already losing his shit. He's already showing that he's diminished. When you finally take his money and they start liquidating his property, and he's cornered financially and has nowhere to turn, and nobody's helping him this time. Keep in mind, Donald Trump has failed mightily in his history, but there's always been somebody who bailed him out. Well, that somebody doesn't exist anymore. Nobody has the willingness or the money to save his ass. He's going to go crashing down and crashing down hard. And this is going to affect him personally. He's not a normal human being. He is emotionally broken. And this will break him into many little pieces. And this is part of the reason why I've said I don't think he'll be the nominee. I don't think he'll be able to handle it. Once the money's gone, he's in a criminal case for the next couple of months, and he gets a conviction, and then he's got to work with that. When is he going to have time to campaign? And who's going to back him other than the base at that point? Nobody. Certainly not the independents, certainly not the moderates, certainly not the women, not the suburbs, nobody. That's why I say when this election happens in November, it could be just a massacre because Donald Trump every day pushes away voters. Like I said, with Nikki Haley, he got mad that people were voting for Nikki Haley. So he goes out and says, I don't want your vote. I don't need your vote. When Nikki Haley's people, her voters, were polled at the exit polls, something like 20, 25, 30% of those people said they would never vote for Donald Trump. They would refuse to vote for Donald Trump. Now, think about that. That's Republicans saying they will not vote for Donald Trump. As I've said before, if you're going to win an election and you're a Republican, you need all the Republican votes and you need independent votes. Well, he's already lost the independent votes, and now it looks like he may have lost 25% of the Republican vote. And if all of that is true, how does he win? He doesn't. There's no way he can win. He's doing nothing to gain voters or gain support. He's losing voters and support every freaking day. And you know what? We still have, what, 7, 8 months before the election? It's going to get worse for him. He's going to do more crazy shit. He's in a corner where he can't get out. And when you get a narcissist backed into a corner, that's when he's the most dangerous. But at this point, he's more dangerous to himself than anybody else. So this is going to be a rough ride for Donald Trump the next couple of weeks. I mean, like I say, by Monday, he better have the money, bitch, the 83 million. Then in 2 weeks, he needs $500 million. And then that same day, he's going on court for 34 criminal charges. And then for the next 2 months, he will be in court every day and ultimately getting convicted. The future doesn't look bright for Donald Trump. He's not in a good position, and there's really no way out of it. He can't slip out of that or get bailed out by somebody. It's all pretty much in stone. Donald Trump is going to go down. There is no question about it. And if some way he can hold on and still be the nominee, well, I'll be fucking amazed. But as I've said before, I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm not going to worry about it because the best possible candidate that Joe Biden could possibly go up against is Donald Trump. Every election that has Donald Trump's face on it has been a loser since after the 2016 election. Every time Donald Trump's face has been on an election, whether it be his face and him, the candidate, or him endorsing people, it always loses. And the people who think he's going to get elected president, please tell me what he's done to improve his lot. He's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again soon.